All right, we're on lesson 4. We're moving right along this week. And so yesterday we looked at perpendicular lines. We looked at that. It looks like an upside down T to say something is perpendicular. We talked about how they form right angles where they meet. We're adding a new word today, a different kind of line, and that is parallel. Parallel lines. Parallel lines are kind of the opposite of perpendicular. Perpendicular lines are going to touch, aren't they? They're going to touch and form right angles. Parallel lines never touch. Think of railroad tracks. If those railroad tracks crossed each other, that train would wreck, wouldn't it? So railroad tracks always have to run parallel beside each other and never touch. They have to stay the same distance away from each other, no matter how far they go. And the third word we're going to see today is intersecting. Now, intersecting means the lines touch, but they don't form those right angles like a perpendicular line or lines do. So parallel lines, they are lines that never touch like railroad tracks. Okay. Perpendicular, we know they are lines or line segments that form a right angle. I made an angle there, didn't I? And intersecting lines, they think of an X. They cross, kind of make an X, but there's not right angles. So we're going to look today at different sets of lines, and we're going to decide if they are parallel lines, if they are perpendicular lines, or if they are just intersecting lines. So let's look at the first example here. A. Well, these lines, they're going in the same direction, and they're never touching, are they? So what kind of lines did we say never touch? That's right, it's the parallel lines. Notice how you spell parallel. 2 L's there, 1 L at the end. How about this right here? These lines, number B. Well, to me, it looks like they're right angles. Let's see. Yeah, so these lines make right angles. So what kind of lines make right angles when they touch? It's perpendicular. Perpendicular lines make right angles when they touch. That was yesterday's lesson. Moving right along. Okay. Lines C right here, they cross, they touch each other, so they're not parallel. Do they make right angles? No, that angle's bigger than a right angle. It's obtuse. That one's smaller. It's acute. That one's bigger. It's obtuse. So I don't see any right angles in this. Do you? So if they're touching, but they don't have right angles, then they are just intersecting lines. They touch, but they do not make right angles like perpendicular lines do. They're just intersecting lines. And our last one here on the example, because you don't need to see many of these, you need to go practice them. Are these lines touching? Not yet. They're not touching yet. Are they going to touch if they keep going? Well, let's see. You can kind of look at it and see they probably will. If I draw this line on out, and if I draw this line on out, boom, they touched right there. But they didn't form any right angles, did they? No, there's no right angles there. So these are intersecting lines. So don't just always go by the picture. Even though these lines weren't touching in the picture, if you look and think about them going on forever, you can see they're going to touch. Whereas if we drew these on out for a mile, they're never going to touch, are they? That's what makes them parallel. So remember, for today's assignment, parallel lines never touch. Perpendicular lines make right angles where they touch. Intersecting lines, they cross, they touch, but they do not form right angles. Easy peasy. Go make a 100. You can do it. See you tomorrow.